This was not how I had envisioned my golden years. I slowly looked around the dining room of the Wagon Wheel Acres. Nothing but old men. Real old men. What depressed me the most was that I was one of them. I was only 62, and I didn't feel that old. In fact, I lied. That's not the depressing part. I'm sitting at a table for 4 with people I don't know. At the other end of the room sits my wife, LaRue, who is sitting at another table with her lover. Everyone in the retirement complex was aware of the situation, which made it even worse. I was very careful when I chose Wagon Wheel Acres. It had a continuing care option, which was good, and it also didn't require a large contribution. The monthly payments for both of us totaled over $3,000, but that included peace of mind and no hassle. Of course, I never imagined Jackson Milhouse would show up. Once again, I lost my appetite watching my wife chatting with Jackson. I've spent 40 years taking care of her, and he gets to enjoy her in her old age. I mean that in every sense of the word. It had been 2 weeks since LaRue had informed me that she'd had intimacy with Jackson and that she was going to continue it. That afternoon, she had moved all of her clothes and personal belongings into his studio apartment. Our apartment had a real bedroom, but it didn't have Jackson in it. I didn't argue with her, and I never did. What does that mean? Over the years, I'd found it much easier to go along with what she wanted. It was better than arguing. I pushed dinner aside and went back to my room. I hated to think that I was paying for her to be here, and Jackson Milhouse was reaping all the benefits. Over the years, I had done everything I could to keep my wife happy sexually, but nothing had worked. It seems Jackson knew something I didn't. In the mirror by the bathroom sink was a business card one of the more active bachelors had given me. I grabbed a cold beer and sank down into the 10-year-old bed chair, the only piece of furniture in the apartment that wasn't new. I took 2 deep sips of my beer and stared at the gold card in front of me. Escort in the Berkshires, by the hour or by the day. It was ridiculous. What would a 62-year-old man do with an escort all day? Hell, I highly doubted I could enjoy an hour. I finished my Fosters and reached for the phone. I had no idea what I was going to say or what I was going to do. I guess I just wanted someone to talk to. Berkshire Escorts, this is Darlene. I made it this far, and then froze. My silence was quickly noticed. Berkshire Escorts, hello, are you here? Hello, yes. I'm here. I think it was pretty obvious that I was a little nervous. My name is Darlene. I assume you have a question you'd like answered? How do you know? Most people who call have questions. So you're not psychic then? Would you like to tell me your name? Carson. My name is Carson. Do you need to know that? Not really, but it'll make it easier to talk to you that way. My friend Dippy gave me your card. Oh, yes, Mr. Burke. You're at the Wagon Wheel, too? Yes, is that a problem? Don't be silly. Why would it be? Dippy tells me that you've been able to provide him with several companions and that he's quite happy. That's very nice of him. I'll have to give him a discount next week. I didn't know what to reply, so there was a slight pause in the conversation. Carson? Carson? Are you here? Yeah, I'm here. I just don't know what to say or ask. Why don't I help you out a little? How long do you need company for? Well, for an hour or 2, I guess. I just need someone to have dinner with, probably at a nice restaurant. I think an hour or 2 will be enough. And that's all you need? I'm not interested in sex, if that's what you mean. All I need is a pleasant companion for a few hours. I was embarrassed, since LaRue was the only woman I'd ever been with. Carson, our escorts cost $300 an hour. That's a lot of money just to take a girl out to dinner with you. Yeah, I know. When you say young lady, what kind of youth are you talking about? Well, most of our escorts are under 30. That doesn't work for me. I find women under 50 a bit annoying. I was hoping for an older lady, someone mature but classy. Do you have any suggestions? I'm afraid there aren't many women of that age working in escort services. I can look for one for you if you'd like. Does that mean it would cost me more like $300 an hour or less? I'm not sure at this point. I have your phone number on caller ID. I'll check and call you back in about an hour. Is that okay with you? That's fine. If you can make an appointment tonight around 7 o'clock? Where were you planning to take the lady? I've decided that the Black Angus is the best place in town. Is that satisfactory to you? That ought to be enough, Carson. Give me an hour. Hanging up the phone made me feel a little better. LaRue and Jackson would be having chicken patty parmesan tonight, and I would be having filet mignon. I spent the next hour going through my closet like a schoolgirl. I opted for a navy blue blazer with a gray turtleneck and khaki pants. I didn't know for sure if Darlene would be able to find anyone, but it was worth the effort. I picked up the phone on the third ring. I could have answered faster, but I didn't want to sound too alarmed. This is Carson. Carson, Darlene, I have some good news. Your escort will be waiting for you in front of the Sheraton Hotel at 7 o'clock. She will be wearing a green dress. Is that okay with you? That sounds great. I'll probably be there a little early, but I don't want to look too anxious. How old is she? Right now, Carson, you should know better. You should never ask a woman her age, but your date today is 58. I hope she is good enough for you. Any other questions? Only one. How do I pay for this? Cash, bring cash. The next few hours flew by like a blink of an eye. Admittedly, the mere thought of the evening ahead was exhilarating. It was only dinner, but it would still be romantic, and I needed it to be. There were plenty of women at Wagon Wheel Acres who would make great dinner companions, but the thought of sleeping with one of them would make me feel mean. If I did that, it would be the same as saying I condoned what my wife was doing with Jackson. I didn't accept her and Jackson together, but I couldn't think of a way to get out of the predicament without losing my head in the process. Of course, nothing could be worse than my current predicament. I could have some fun while I worked on a solution. I left the house a little early so I could have time to wash the Civic. It didn't need it, but the evening was special. It would have been nice to have a more impressive set of wheels, but I had to make do with what I had. I ended up sitting in the parking lot of the Sheraton and watched the drive-in. I didn't want to stop before my escort came out, but I didn't want to keep her waiting either. Damn it, I wished I had more experience in this area. I felt like a teenager. She was definitely a classy lady. Her dress fit her well but didn't look cheap. No one could mistake her for a paid escort. For 58 years old, she looked damn good. For a moment I thought maybe I should have gone for the full package. But no. Talk is cheap. There was no way I could pull that off. Dinner was everything. It was all I could handle tonight. I carefully pulled up to the driveway, parked, and walked over to open the door. Carson, I presume? Yes, ma'am. And what should I call you? Darlene Carson. Just call me Darlene. She smiled slyly, noticing my expression. She was still smiling when I walked around her and back into the driver's seat. I don't understand. I thought you were going to find me an escort. Yeah, but I called Dippy and talked to him for a while. I decided I was the best choice for this evening. You do that regularly? She laughed a little. No, in fact, this is the first time in 6 years that I've been out with a gentleman. Did I seem that desperate to you? No, silly, I wasn't desperate, but Dippy said you could use a little cheering up. Besides, it's been a long time since I've had a pleasant evening. Now enough store talk. Can I have some lobster? Darlene didn't order the lobster, but got a small fillet instead. The evening went as I expected. After the meal, we sat and talked for several more hours until the waiters politely asked us to leave. She had never married and had started working in the escort business while still in college. A few years later, she had her own firm and seemed to be very proud of herself because she was good at it. I started to walk back to the Sheraton to drop her off, but she gave me a local address. It was a small brick house in a very upscale neighborhood. It was odd because most of the houses around it were quite large. There was a "for sale" sign hanging in the center of the yard. I walked her to the front door, not knowing what to expect next. Would she invite me in? Should I kiss her? Should I just shake her hand? She solved this dilemma with one of her sweet smiles. I hope your evening went as well as you hoped, Carson. I nodded as she extended her hand. That'll be $300, please. Okay, I wasn't expecting that, but I should have because I was smiling. I separated 3 bills from the small wad of $100 bills I'd brought with me and held it out to her. I don't understand. We were together for almost 4 hours? Yes, but that was my choice, not yours. I'll only charge you for the first hour. Is that okay with you? Of course. It was worth twice as much. I watched as she folded 3 bills and tucked them into her bra like in the movies. I think she did it on purpose to shock me. Darlene, can we do this again? Are you sure? There was a seriousness in her question that distracted me a little. Of course. I had a wonderful evening. I'd do it every night if I could afford it. She laughed again. Carson, why don't you come here tomorrow night around 6? I'll cook us something. I'd love to. I turned to leave, but then stopped. How much will it cost? $300, silly. It's always $300. At that moment, she took my hand, leaned forward, and kissed me. I wasn't expecting it, which made it even more exciting. I noticed a slight reaction in my groin area. Maybe I should ask Dippy to get me some blue pills. I got my chance the next morning at breakfast. I was watching LaRue and Jackson across the dining room when Dippy pulled up a chair and more or less forcibly wedged himself into our group at the table. He had already eaten, but still had a cup of coffee in his hand. Carson, old buddy, how was your evening? Of course, the other 3 at the table had no idea what he was talking about. Better than expected. He noticed me smiling. Much better than expected. I pushed my plate away, grabbed my cup, and we walked over to the coffee urn. Is that all you're going to tell me? Dippy, I don't have anything else to talk about. We had dinner and that's it. Nothing else. I didn't sleep with her. Then what the hell did you pay her for? I didn't have an answer that would satisfy him, so I said nothing. We made ourselves comfortable in the living room with 2 cups of fresh joe. Dippy, can you get me some pills? Sure, no problem for $20 a pop. Mildred will take care of you. Mildred? You mean the old lady in the wheelchair? Yes, she ran out of her annuity a few years ago. I don't know where she gets her pills, but she has a steady supply and has been able to stay here by selling them. Isn't free enterprise great? So, Carson, who did she set you up with? I think I already know all of them. The way he said it, I realized he'd never been with Darlene. I believed her when she said she hadn't had a client in 6 years. In fact, I think I believed almost everything she told me. Either she was being honest with me or she was a great liar. The ability to lie convincingly, however, was a great asset to a woman in her profession. I think her name was Greta. She had an accent, sort of Slavic or Russian. I didn't know why I didn't just tell him the truth. As we sat and chatted, LaRue and Jackson walked by, still in their own private little world. My wife didn't look in my direction or acknowledge my presence. No one would have guessed I was married to this woman. I heard Dippy snicker slightly, for which I received an elbow in the ribs. Dinner with Darlene was another memorable evening. She wasn't a gourmet, but she cooked well. Dippy had called in the afternoon and insisted she set him up with Greta. She quickly realized what was up and set him up with one of her new girlfriends. She was an aspiring actress and was eager to try her Dr. Zhivago accent on poor Dippy. I think Darlene appreciated the fact that I didn't reveal her name to Dippy. The evening ended all too soon, and I got another kiss as I left, right after I gave her another $300. The next night, we went out for sushi. I knew what I liked to order, but she knew how to order it in Japanese. She was an amazing woman, and I wanted to spend as much time with her as possible. The only problem was that I was married, and I didn't know how long I could keep paying the damn $300. We always spent much more than an hour together, but it always cost the same. I couldn't figure out what the big deal was, and I wasn't about to ask. And things came to a head that weekend when my daughter Sylvia came to visit. She lived about an hour away, but only came 3 or 4 times a year. This visit was a little different from previous visits. I saw Sylvia when she arrived. She had, as usual, left her husband, Barry, and 2 children at home. Instead of going into our room, which was now my room, Sylvia went straight to the room where Jackson and her mother lived. She stayed with them for over 2 hours. They all left the room and wandered around the facility for another hour, just talking and laughing. Finally, I noticed my daughter glance at her watch and say something to her mother, then walk back toward the main building of the complex. I had no desire to talk to her at this point, so I hid in the back of the building. 5 minutes later, I watched her car pull out of the parking lot, heading back to her happy home. I was sad because Sylvia and I had always been close, or so it seemed to me. LaRue and Jackson were still sitting by the koi pond like a pair of lovebirds. That night I spent with Darlene. I was pleased that she was waiting for me to make the first move, and I was thrilled that she readily accepted my advances. I was also pleased that I had given $100 to Mildred. Then I got some bad news. Darlene had sold her house. She had also sold her business to some longtime young girls who had saved up to buy her out. Her college degree was actually an MBA, and with that piece of paper came the ability to manipulate investments to maximize returns. She wasn't just wealthy, she was damn rich. Over the past year, she had completely renovated the house she had bought in Merida, Mexico. Now the renovations were complete, and she was ready to move in. By then, I knew her well enough to realize that she wouldn't approach me. I had no idea what I should do, but I had to ask. "Darlene, can I come with you sometime?" She responded not with words, but with a smile and a hug. This woman knew many men, and I was at a complete loss as to how I was the one she had chosen to stay with. I was flattered, of course, but I was still confused. I decided not to question her motives, but to accept them. "Carson, I think we can work things out if you want to." "I guess I'll have to get a divorce?" "Oh, absolutely not. You'll lose half of everything you have. Just let me take care of everything. We'll be leaving in 10 days. Are you sure you want to do that?" "Oh, yeah, I'm sure. By the way, where the hell is Merida?" For the whole of the next week, I was busy. Fortunately, my passport was in order. Darlene drew up the paperwork so I could resell my condo at Wagon Wheel Acres to them. It wasn't a lot of money, but I got 80% of the original purchase price. Darlene set up a bank account for me at Citibank, which in Merida operates as Banamex. She assured me that I would have enough money to live comfortably, especially since I didn't have to pay rent and utilities. The money from the sale of the apartment was used to open an account. The money from my checking and savings accounts followed. My retirement package from Gilbert Industries included an annuity account that was set up to protect my assets. Fortunately, Darlene found people willing to buy an annuity for a fixed amount. I had seen commercials on TV where people would yell, "This is my money and I want it now," and I always doubted that was true. I ended up getting 82% of the account value. I didn't get any more monthly payments, but I did get a nice amount of cash. I put almost $800,000 into my Citibank account. I had no trouble selling the Honda. I put that money in my pocket to have something to walk on. By then, Darlene had opened an account for me at Banamex Bank in Merida. I could transfer money from my Citibank account at any time, but I needed the Banamex account to have my Social Security check automatically deposited into it. A trip to the local Social Security office made that easier, but it was still a heck of a hassle. The last few days before I left, I spent all my time at Darlene's. Dippy told me that LaRue never noticed my absence. Of course he hadn't. I gave Dippy my HDTV. I was no longer paying for Wagon Wheel Acres. Of course, that meant LaRue was no longer getting paid. From now on, Jackson Millhouse would be paying for his girlfriend. It's hard to describe what the houses in Merida look like. It looks more like a village in Spain or Italy. All of the houses are in pastel colors and closely spaced. They are quite simple and unpretentious on the outside, but extremely sophisticated on the inside. In no time at all, Darlene and I were settled into our new home. I felt like a gigolo because she paid all the expenses. I tried to compensate by buying her little gifts until she firmly told me to stop. Everything was right, everything was fine, and then one day, 6 months later, Sylvia showed up. Darlene welcomed my daughter into her home and then left for the market. I was left alone with my only child, who I had no desire to talk to in the slightest. "Dad, what the hell are you doing here? You need to come home." I had no answer for a question like that. I sat down and suggested she do the same. "Can you be more specific?" Sylvia looked a little upset, and we hadn't even started talking yet. "You left without telling anyone and took everything with you." "Yeah, so? And what about your wife?" "What about her?" I asked her to come with me, and she said she wanted to stay with Jackson. I lied, but Sylvia didn't know that. There was no way she could prove or disprove what I said. "But you took everything, all the ready money and the retirement account. What was she supposed to do?" "When I left, she seemed to be doing just fine. In fact, she wanted nothing to do with me." "Why are you here now?" "You can't just leave her. She's your wife." The last time you came to Wagon Wheel Acres before I left, you spent 3 hours with Jackson and Mother and took no time at all for me. Why? I tried to find you, but you weren't in your room. You tried to find me 3 hours later. Who was I? A nuisance? An obligation of some kind? Don't be so dramatic. Mom was happy with Jackson. She wanted me to get to know him better. Fine. Let him take care of her. Surely you know she slept with him in his room. Yes. She said you didn't want to sleep in the same bed with her anymore. Did you really believe that? What do you want, Sylvia? Why did you try so hard to find me and then come here? I'm not going back. I'm not going to let her rub her infidelity in my face. It was humiliating and insulting, and if you can't understand that, you need help. Barry and I can no longer afford to pay for her services at Wagon Wheel Acres. Her Social Security doesn't cover half of her expenses, and they won't let her go without full payment. What about good old Jackson? I thought he'd be helping out. Jackson Millhouse was moved to the Alzheimer's unit 3 months ago. The rules don't allow his mother to stay in the room with him, and we can't afford to keep her in the unit alone. Wait! Are you saying you want me to give her money so she can continue to live at Wagon Wheel Acres and be near her lover? Dad, she's comfortable there. She wants to stay there because it's safe and familiar. Bullshit! She wants to stay there to be near him, even though he probably doesn't know who the hell she is anymore. You're crazy if you think I'm going to let her use me for something like that. You're being unfair. Why don't you let her live with you? She can babysit and do other things. You have a big enough house. We offered. She turned it down. She wants to stay at Wagon Wheel Acres. I rose slowly from my chair and went into the hallway. Taking my hat from the rack by the door, I looked at my daughter. She had traveled over 1,000 miles for nothing. Her mother had hung horns on me, and now my daughter was trying to make me feel guilty for not accepting the humiliation. I'm going to the market. Close the door on your way out. I knew exactly where I could find Darlene. I never found out what motivated LaRue to do what she did. I don't even care anymore. I'm happy in my adobe hacienda.